Today is Sunday, September the 8th, 2024, and I would like to have a discussion on prosthetic proselytizing. But before we have this discussion, I need to define the term so that you understand the analogy I am using. I also want to mention that in this video, there is information that could be offensive to some viewers and inappropriate for others, so viewer discretion is advised. When people who are familiar with the word prosthetic hear it, they often will think of an artificial body part that replaces a part that's missing or no longer functional. And that is the most common use of the word. In this case, however, I'm using the word prosthesis to focus specifically on an external part that is worn or used during the day and then removed at night. In terms of proselytism, is the attempt to convert people's religious or political beliefs. And my question is to convert people from what, to what, and why? Because that sets the frame for understanding that there are people who are against those of us who are working towards paradise worldwide. This is not imagined and is based in reality. There are people who absolutely are against the idea of a paradise worldwide where 100% of the people agree to do no intentional harm 100% of the time. So when you think about people who are working to convert, you have to understand what it is they see as a problem, why they want to convert people away from that problem, and for what purpose. What would be the outcome of being able to change people's minds from one way of thinking to another way of thinking. When you look at these two photos, what is the problem? Why are these two people in disagreement in each of the individual photos? How would you help them to resolve the conflict between them? Would you want to help them resolve the conflict in between them, especially if you believe that the argument is irrelevant and will not impact you directly? I want to share with you responses to a comment I made to a post last night, which led me to make this particular video using this as a common everyday occurrence for most people in their social media lives. Part of the reason I want to share this is that I want people to understand that witch hunting is not for the faint of heart. You must, one, have no fear of death, and two, have the courage to speak the truth without shrinking back, regardless of what the other person may be saying that is contradictory, but inclusive of some aspects of truth. I did reply to most of these responses. If you want to see those replies, you'll have to find the post yourself. However, the point that I want to make in this last one is that you cannot argue the Bible with someone who is using a Bible different than the one that you are familiar with. And that goes both ways. I want to share with you a Bible that was used during a Bible study I attended in about 2010, so that you have a perspective from an alternate text that still aligns with what the Bible is teaching generally, unlike some other interpretations of biblical messaging, which I will share in a moment. This is the old Charlie Farquharson's Testament, written by Don Herron in 1978. And as you can see here, it is intended to be facetious and satirical, but you can absolutely assume that there are people who use this as a biblical text. The text is written in a Southern heavy dialect. So when it's read, you sound as though you are in the Deep South. For the context of this video, I'm going to read chapters 44 through 49, but if you do not know the backstory of Joseph, what you need to know is that his own brothers sold him into slavery as a teenager, and he was able to turn that experience around of being enslaved, of being incarcerated, and so forth, into prominence in Egypt as a result of his honesty and his own fortitude. Before I read from this text, let me go back to the video yesterday for a moment to look at Genesis chapter 12. How might you confuse the language of people who already all speak the same language? It would probably take longer than one generation. Doesn't that make sense? Let's go back to the Bible. After the instructions in chapter 11 are given for building the tower, there's more genealogy until you come to chapter 12, where it says, "Now the Lord said to Abram," a specific person, "go from your country and your kindred," which means family, "and your father's house to the land that I will show you." The implication here is that his mother also has a house, but they don't talk about that here. The point that I want to show you here is shall be blessed is actually translated as shall bless themselves. So you will create the foundation upon which all the other families will then bless themselves. So in the context of this video, we are looking at nation building, because once you have built a city and then more than one city, of course you want to grow those cities into a nation. And in modern times, we have what they call the United Nations. But you see here that it says the promise that a great nation will come from Abraham stands in tension with Sarah's barrenness in 1130, because she cannot have children. So how do you build a nation if your wife cannot have children? Much of the following narrative revolves around this tension. Nation implies not just a numerous people, but a politically independent social group. I will bless you involves giving Abraham the power to flourish in flocks, other riches, and offspring, and make your name great to become famous. Now, let's listen to Charlie Farquharson's version of these chapters. Joseph gave orders to his hired hand for to load up his brother's asses with corn and stick the money they had already given in on top again. As far as little Benny, plant this here silver cup in his nappy sack too. Next morning, every brother was on his ass heading for home when they was stepped by your Egypt highway patrol, who done a routine search and found Joseph's special cup where he done all his readings into with Future and Band's bag. The brothers was so upset this time that they all rented their clothes and went back to Joseph, who pretended to be mad and all get out. Yelled Joseph, "Whoever done this cup copping, we'll find out by having a general dump out. And if it happens to be your bag, well, your one gets to be my slave and rest of you's go on home." All them brothers knew it would be Ben had the missing silverware. Sure enough, it clanked on the ground in front of the baby of the batch. Before Joseph could claim the boy, Big Brother Judy reared up and spoke. "Brother Benny should have known better than trying a thing like this with you and your extra sensory deception. But it'll kill the old man if he don't get back home on time. So put your slave's bracelet on me instead." "What's so special about Benny?" asked Joseph. Big Rube told Joseph that Ben was the only remaining son of Jacob's favorite wife. Rachel's other boy hadn't been lost in a pitfall some time back and more than likely tore up to pieces by a wild, untrained beast. All the other brothers swallowed hard, especially little Benny, but Joseph was having a fit inside. He had told all his Egyptians just to head home, and as soon as he was alone with his brethren, he started bawling fit to bust. Everybody was embarrassed to tears by all of Joseph's. Even them Egyptians outside the door on their way home heard the ruckus. Even Pharaoh's householder caught wind of it. That's how loud it was carrying on. But Joseph didn't care. He told the brothers to come closer, and their mind splashed. He told them he was their brother Joseph, what they had sold down the river as fur in Egypt. They was all taking a step back when they heard that. But Joseph said it must have been all parts God's plan to keep the family together with bread in their mouths. It weren't you who put me down in Egypt, but him up there. And remember, they's 5 years of famine let to go. And I'm awful big in Egypt. So you better go back and get your old man and everybody settle down at once right here. Then he fell on all the brothers' necks and kissed them, especially Benny's, and told them all hurry up and bring down their old dad, and he get Pharaoh to send them all up in a subdivision. Pharaoh, he was tickled pink to have Joseph family move in on him. He got them all loaded and sent them back to Canaan, promising them all that they would eat off of fattened land. And take a couple wagons for your little ones and the little women too, and don't forget the old man. The best none too good for any kin of Joseph after all he done, thus spoke Pharaoh. Well, them sons of Israel didn't have to be asked twice. And presents Pharaoh sent along, more shekels than you can shake a stick at. Festival garments, 10 asses absolutely loaded with good things from Egypt, and 10 she-asses the same way with bread and mixed grains for your return journey. The last thing Joseph said to them was, come back in one piece. Don't fight on the way for God's sake. No time at all seemed before they was back home. Jacob near dropped when they told him his number one boy Joseph was alive and well and living in Egypt. He sure revived though when he saw all them wagons Joseph sent. Old Jacob got carried away in style. All he was thinking as he left the homestead for the last time was, see Joseph and die. On the way out, Jacob passed Beer-sheba, where she had his own dream of climbing the ladder to success. God spoke to him again, saying, don't be afraid down there in Egypt, for I still be with you all, and you're going to still be a great nation. There was an awful host of them lit out for Egypt, tailing long after Jacob. Regular wagon train it was. Sons and sons and sons and sons and daughters. It would take pert near as long to list them as it done to get there. Anyways, they was 70 in all. Land of Goshen, that's where they was all heading. Joseph was there to meet him in his best chariot. When Jacob come face to face with his boy Joseph, there was a wrath of falling on necks and kissing on them and tear after tear. Father's greeting was typical. Now I know you're alive. I can die in peace. But Joseph was more practical. He told his father and his brothers to tell Pharaoh they was cattlemen on account of Egyptians can't abide shepherds. Maybe because they've been skinned too many times. When Pharaoh met Joseph's people, he asked, what do you do for a living? One of them said, we're just a bunch of shepherds. But Pharaoh counted on Joseph so much he didn't seem to mind. But he told Joseph to see that they could get a job handling his cattle. When Joseph brung in his father Jacob, Pharaoh said, well, bless my soul. So Jacob done it for him. After that, Pharaoh asked Jacob, how old are you? Jacob said, 130, and that's nothing compared to my father and grandfather. Pharaoh was so pleased to meet this long liver, he gave him some of the best land in the land of Ramses, his own father. Mind you, land ain't much during drought or famine. There weren't much money either. It had all been spent on food. Even Egyptians was broke, never mind them in Canaan and points east. When they all asked Joseph for food, he gave them some in exchange for cattle. Next year, they come back for more food. There weren't no cattle to trade, so they trade themselves. Joseph ended up buying all of Egypt and all the Egyptians for Pharaoh. The only people he never sold into slavery was your priests, on account of they all had allowances from the government and it was fixed. Joseph's deal with the slave people of Egypt was 20% discount. They kept 4/5 and Pharaoh took the 5th. Joseph's own family done good out of it, and they multiplied till they was full of fruit. Old see Joseph and died Jacob was good for another 70 years. At 147, he decided to call it quits. He called in Joseph and said, promise me honor bright by putting your hand under my thigh. You'll take me back to the land of my fathers and not bury me here on this lone desert. Joseph swore to do right by his old man and brung along his 2 sons for to get grandfather's blessing. Jacob was all bowed up to die, but he sat up in bed for to look at his 2 half-breed grandsons. And Jacob took one look and said, God Almighty. He told Joseph on the Lord's promise to give him and his descendants the land of Israel forever and ever. Now Joseph's 2 sons was Ephraim and Manasseh. Jacob could hardly see them, he was so dim with age in the eyes, but he wanted to bless them anyways and bring them into the fold. Jacob took Ephraim on one hand and Manasseh on the other and patted them both on the heads, crossing hands as he done so. That put the right hand on Ephraim and the left on Manasseh. This upset Joseph, because it meant he was giving the backhand to the firstborn. But Jacob claimed he knew what he was doing. Young Manasseh will be great, but his younger brother Ephraim gonna be even greater. Nobody spoke up at this point because the old man was probably on his last leg. Besides, last thing he done was to deed Joseph some Canaan land Jacob had took by force from some Amorites with the sword and bow and arrow. After that, Jacob brought all the sons in and called them names, namely the 12 tribes of Israel, and he charged them all too to bury him in that cave where Abraham took Sarah and Isaac put in Rebekah, and Jacob himself had already put away Leah. After Jacob finished charging his sons, he breathed his last breath and was gathered in to his people. Raise your hand if you believe that with the genealogy in Genesis and Chronicles, no one knows the genealogy of the family of Ishmael. Abraham had 2 sons. I digress. Let's move on. Now, I would like to share with you a clip from the 1937 movie Nation Aflame, which I will link in the description. And I'd like for you to consider the question in 2024, whether or not you know of anyone like Joseph whose family or close friends completely not only abandoned him, but sold him into a enslavement type of situation that he was able to overcome to rebuild or to build a life for himself, which then they were able to profit from. And what they then did with all that he had been willing to share while living with him and then after he died. Do you know any people in 2024 with a hustle mentality who are completely irresponsible and will not learn the skills that are necessary in order to take care of themselves, but instead continuously wandering around, taking advantage of, manipulating, and leeching off of people who are doing their best to work hard and to be good people?
What's that got to do with us making any big dough?
You explain it to him, Frank, in one cylinder words. You're used to talking to these dumb clucks. You see, people everywhere are jealous of the other fellow and his money. But now, with the depression and unemployment conditions, this idea's a cinch. We'll capitalize on jealousy, intolerance, and patriotism. We'll form a secret lodge and band our members into a legion of patriotic avengers. The Avenging Angels.
That's a great name, Avenging Angels.
With plenty of mystery, secret meetings, secret oaths, mysterious robes, and phony riches.
Boy, the suckers will eat it up.
Right.
Welcome to Second Feature on CUNY TV. Tonight's film, Nation Aflame. In an unnamed southern state, a group of con men looking for a new scam sets up a statewide black-robed organization called the Avenging Angels to back one of their number as a gubernatorial candidate by appealing to people's bigotry and prejudice against immigrants. And now, Nation Aflame.
Adam City, my good friends, is the paradise of the West. The acme of all home builders' dreams. Think of it, friends. A real lakeside home. A beautiful lake for swimming, boating, fishing. At no cost to you, we stand the entire expense. Everything absolutely free. I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, Adams City, sponsored by that eminent philanthropist, Mr. Roland Adams. Is a fast-growing center of culture, a city with a future. Buy that future now. Put your money where you can watch it grow. And remember, folks, there is no finer investment on earth than Earth itself. I thank you.
But you see, I have only $25.
Now, that's all right, lady. Don't you apologize, because for $25 down, you're getting a magnificent, swell bargain.
You'll never regret it.
And your children will never regret it.
And your grandchildren will never regret it.
And your great-great-grandchildren will thank you.
But I'm not married.
Take my word for it, lady. You have the most beautiful lot in the tract.
Will there really be a lake there, Mr. Wolf?
Why, the whole valley will be underwater in 60 days. Roland Adams' honesty has never been questioned.
Come on, fella. Let's get him. Let's turn our faces. Let's get him. Get him.
What's the cause of this confusion, may I ask?
We represent every decent and progressive organization in this town, from the Chamber of Commerce on down. For months you've been robbing the people with your misstatements, and now we're going to put an end to it.
Why, my friend, Adams City is a legitimate enterprise. A boon to your community. We're running an honest business, and the law must protect us.
We know the law has no power to remove you. That's the reason we're here. But you and your gang of hoodlums are leaving this town with a personal escort. And this money is going to be given back to the people from whom it was stolen.
I resent that.
Go on, get going.
You can't do this, Sheriff. I'll take this up with my senator. So you can't get... Hey, Mayor Brains?
Yeah, a lot of good your legal mind did you in the hands of Martin and his mob. This burns my potato.
Oh, I admit I made a mistake, but it could have been worse.
Yeah, I suppose I could have broken dates with two beautiful redheads instead of one.
Meeting of the board of directors of the Unica Realty Company. And I'm telling you, it's against the regulations for 5 to sleep in one room. I guarantee no one will sleep here tonight.
Oh, that's different.
Wait a minute. Bring us 5 ham sandwiches and a large pot of hot coffee.
And bring me the same. Oh, what will you have? Aspirin?
Oh, no, my feet burn.
Hey, Junior.
Yes, sir.
Bring me some grapes.
And you, sir?
Scram egg.
Scrambled eggs?
Yes, sir.
Well, Governor, what next?
Well, it's a little too early to mention any definite concrete plans, but I have an idea formulating in the back of my mind that may turn out stupendously proportional.
Well, didn't count me out. That mob back there was stupendous enough for me.
What are you squawking about? I made a pretty slick living for you, didn't I? Ever since you joined up with us, and it's for that mob? What's a mob, anyway?
A mob's bad medicine, Adams, unless you're on the controlling end. I know because I've lectured before some of the best mobs in the country. Did any of you fellas ever hear of the word prejudice?
Yeah, that's when one guy hates another guy, ain't it?
Your intelligence fairly overwhelms me, Wilson.
The mob that just wrecked Adams City wasn't even organized. It sprang up overnight, and yet it had plenty of members. You know why? Prejudice. You see, the leader of the mob wasn't only head of the Chamber of Commerce, he was in the real estate business, too. So he went around to all the clubs and told the people that we were a bunch of crooks, racketeers, maybe with changed names.
What's that got to do with us making any big dough?
You explain it to him, Frank, in one cylinder words. You're used to talking to these dumb clucks.
You see, people everywhere are jealous of the other fellow and his money, intolerant of his religion, prejudiced. But now, with the depression and unemployment conditions, this idea's a cinch. We'll capitalize on jealousy, intolerance, and patriotism. We'll form a secret lodge and band our members into a legion of patriotic avengers, the Avenging Angels. And we'll build up the mayor here as the great public defender and benefactor.
Yeah, but listen, what I want to know is, where do we get our dough?
What about the financing, Governor?
Well, that comes under the heading of the managerial department. Let me worry about that. Well, boys, I've got it. We're going back to my old hometown where I used to be mayor. A big shot before repeal came along, and the bootleggers stopped paying me protection money, and then I quit. My daughter there has an independent income. She's financed my enterprises before. Now, she'll put us up until we rake in a few initiation fees and sell a few robes. Boys, if we work this thing right, we ought to have a couple of thousand members anyway.
A couple of thousand, Mayor?
Well, that many and maybe more if your gift of gab holds out.
Don't you worry about my gift of the gab. I'll make the Avenging Angels a national institution, or I miss my guess. And from now on, don't call me Sandino. My name's Sands. Don't forget it. American names for American people.
Speaking of avenging angels, remember, my question is, what does it mean to convert someone? From what, to what, and for what purpose? And why are these two sets of people arguing again? Aleister Crowley, born in 1875, was a British occultist, writer, and mountaineer who was a practitioner of magic, as he spelled it, and called himself the Beast 666, drawing on the number of the beast mentioned in the Book of Revelation. He was denounced in his own time for his decadent lifestyle and had few followers, but he became a cult figure after his death. Crowley's father was an heir to a brewing fortune who became an evangelist for the Plymouth Brethren, a nonconformist religious denomination. The younger Crowley, however, formed an aversion to Christianity early in life. As a student at Trinity College, University of Cambridge, he began to use the name Aleister and gained a reputation for skill at chess. In 1898, he left the university without taking a degree. His own inheritance left him free to travel widely and to arrange for the publication of his writings. His first book of poetry appeared in 1898, and numerous books followed. Those include his most notable works, the Book of the Law, which is a Bible for Thelemites, the Book of Thoth, and the Diary of a Drug Fiend.
Aleister Crowley was born on the 12th of October 1875 in the sleepy English town of Leamington Spa. His father, Edward Crowley, was a preacher and belonged to a fringe Christian sect known as the Plymouth Brethren. They took a radical fundamentalist view to the Bible. Meaning that whatever was written down was meant to be taken literally. At its worst, this included the subjugation of women and the persecution of homosexuals. His preaching career was cut short, however, when in 1886 he died of tongue cancer. From a young age, Aleister was sent to a number of boarding schools. He was a strange boy, preferring his own company instead of playing with other children. As a result, he was often subject to bullying, sometimes by his teachers. This troubled child grew into a troubled teenager. He began to question his strict Christian upbringing and enjoyed pointing out inconsistencies in the Bible. At the same time, he was often caught smoking, drinking, and even visiting prostitutes. Horrified, his mother would nickname him the Beast, which is a monster from the Book of Revelation, a nickname that Crowley would soon delight in. In 1895, at the age of 19, Aleister enrolled at the University of Cambridge to study English literature. He developed a love for chess and romantic poetry, reading the works of Lord Byron, Edward John Trelawney, and Percy Shelley. It was during this time when Alistair developed an unexplainable attraction to a fellow student, Herbert Charles Pollitt. The feeling was mutual, and the two entered a brief and passionate relationship. Their commitment to one another was soon to end, for Alistair developed a deeper love, the occult. Spending days at a time in old dusty libraries, Alistair discovered books of a more mystical nature. It had started innocently, with religious texts from around the world, but he soon delved into darker material. Works like the Lesser Key of Solomon, a 16th century grimoire of spells, rituals, and evil spirits. His morbid curiosity with magic and the dark arts evolved into an obsession, and he soon decided to devote his life to occultism. Having left Cambridge, failing to finish his degree, Alistair was able to live off the money that he'd inherited from his father. From a young age, Alistair was extraordinarily wealthy. This allowed him to travel around the world and pursue his expensive hobbies, chief among which was mountain climbing, something he gained recognition for among mountaineering circles. But Crowley was keen to progress his occult education. In November 1898, he was introduced to the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. The group believed to possess ancient knowledge. They studied esoteric teachings, medieval Jewish Kabbalah, and performed magical ceremonies, which included ritualistic drug-taking. Members of this group included Arthur Conan Doyle, the author of Sherlock Holmes. Adopting the name Brother Perebduro, Alistair impressed all those around him, displaying an extensive knowledge of occult literature. As a result, he quickly rose through the ranks. But his roguish lifestyle of excessive drug-taking and bisexuality made him a controversial figure and led to a number of feuds with fellow initiates. Those around him spoke of his, quote, unappeasable desire to control people, and that he also had, quote, a tendency to quarrel savagely with anyone who disagreed with him. Many fellow members refused him from ascending further ranks. A schism soon developed within the order, which led to Alistair leaving shortly after.
There are people who are born into occult cultures who know no other teaching. My question is, what would attract someone who had been exposed to other teachings to join and be actively involved in a cult? And if you are a witch hunter, how you distinguish the difference between the two? She got up first, and then she did wake. I was partially awake, but then I did finally wake up. And then I was like, okay, fine, I'll get up, but, let's just kind of pace ourselves and not, I don't want to have to feel rushed or anything. And she was like, well, you said that we had to get up and go before noon. And I said, I did not say we have to go before noon. I said we need to try to be out and about by noon because the demons come out after noon. And the demons come out after noon because they're up all night. And but I said Sunday is different. It's Saturday. It's usually Monday through Saturday that they're out all over the place from noon until midnight, somewhere around there. I said, but on Sundays, it's kind of like a day off because they're all in church. And I really meant that. I said, they're all in church because that's where the fresh meat is. People who are not churched are not open to what is the word? Artificial spiritual experiences. So because they'll dismiss anything that is out of the ordinary and try to figure out what it is, if it's irritating them or just like, whatever. But people who are churched are open to artificial, spiritual, woo-woo, fake supernatural type experiences because of how religion functions and what religion requires you to believe. And so if you are in the church on Sunday, anybody who comes in that's new is probably going through something and is ripe for a miracle. So if you give someone who is ripe for a miracle relief from their suffering, because the system has the capacity to impose suffering in every way. And so the system therefore also has the capacity to relieve any suffering that has been imposed through remedies or through, someone showing up and offering you a job or, whatever have you. And then you create in that person a allegiance to the church because they have a testimony. They can say, I went to church and I prayed and, whatever. And then this thing that I was having a problem with went away, or something happened, or I got money, or I got a new job, or my child got better, or whatever it was. And then once they are that embedded, they will fight for the church. They will not allow anyone who does not believe the way they do to force them to surrender any nonsensical thinking for reality, because they were blessed, so to speak, in a miraculous way that only occurred after they became churched. So, so I explained all that to her, and I said, that is why you don't have to worry about it. They are in every commercial center during the week afternoon, between noon and, the time stores close, and then they go home, and then they start, doing all this, all of the other stuff and passing on the information and all that kind of stuff. And let's look at a cinematic interpretation of what a witch hunter might look like in an extreme situation. The scenes included in this clip may be disturbing for some viewers. Discretion is advised.
So where are we going?
It's a surprise, baby.
Yeah, I like surprises. Yeah. Woo! Oh my God. What the fuck are we doing here? Woo! Look at all that. What the fuck is that?
Hey!
Wanna come front?
Prostoscus!
What did you just say?
It may be helpful to know, not only is this not a spoiler for the movie for those of you who want to watch it, but that Blade does come in and save this young man from this brood of vampires. When you think about the terms avenging angel, regardless of what they look like, what do you imagine they would be doing? Avenging what? Remember that my original question is, what is the purpose of conversion? To change people's minds and convert them to what? For what reason? And what about these two sets of people? Why are they arguing again? Could this dispute be settled? If so, how? What level of wisdom would a person need in order to accomplish that? Do the people you trust and follow have that level of wisdom? By the way, how might a nation be birthed in reality?